Let us execute an immediate, sweeping analytical vector shift away from pristine English country estates, marital captivity rooms, and the absolute isolation of domestic imprisonment, and plunge straight into the high-octane, calculation-heavy tracking grids of small-town Texas dirt, weaponized true crime podcast broadcasting networks, and the fiercely protective, dangerously fragile world of an amnesiac blackout survivor asset running a raw, tactical survival loop. We are crossing the threshold directly into the hyper-monitored, gossip-heavy perimeters of a hostile hometown ecosystem, exploring the lethal analytical parameters of an intense, trust-shattering deception matrix with Listen for the Lie, the exceptional, pulse-pounding structural masterpiece engineered by the absolute undisputed sovereign of razor-sharp modern noir, dark internal monologue tracking, and high-velocity media paranoia, Amy Tintera. This high-stakes narrative tracking sequence delivers an exceptional look at an operational crossroads where a fierce, heavily targeted female asset running an unyielding safety loop, an encroaching, deceptively charming investigative journalist asset running a high-stakes proximity tracking routine, and an absolute defense of a fractured memory's final survival metrics collide at terminal velocity. Let us map the strategic narrative grid. If you are an elite enthusiast of high-octane, slow-burn psychological thrillers where an endangered, hyper-observant female protagonist must navigate an absolute maze of rigged police interrogation logs, corrupt high-society family alliances, and a deadly ring of active online frame-ups while running a blind survival loop inside a completely compromised southern ecosystem, where an analytical mind uses deep behavioral profiling, calculated internal boundaries, and absolute emotional stamina to outmaneuver an invisible predatory executioner network, and where the author utilizes an incandescent amnesiac woman suspected of murdering her best friend years ago is forced to return home when a hit true crime podcast reopens the case diagnostic routine to test our hero's structural limits, this book is engineered to lock you in. Tintera completely dominates the high-precision true crime media frenzy meets suffocating small-town hostility dynamic, capturing the heart-racing intellectual momentum, suffocating domestic paranoia, and heavy deductive depth popularized by genre vargs like Gillian Flynn, Sharp Objects, Sadie Jones, Alice Feeney, and Megan Golden, while treating realistic head trauma memory logistics, complex multimedia alignment arcs, and protective high-density psychological extraction grids with absolute technical mastery. The narrative tracking grid zeroes in on the highly volatile, calculation-heavy baseline of our central legendary powerhouse asset, Lucy Chase, operating under a severe, calculation-heavy handicap of a total physical memory blackout, permanent societal condemnation, and an intense, dark internal monologue that hints at hidden violent impulses. Behind Lucy's rigorous digital database footprints and tense personal history logs lies an intricate matrix of hidden faction allegiances, deeply buried high-society crimes, and sharp, high-stakes tactical maneuvers. Her collective defense mechanisms are locked down tight behind a lifetime of surviving complex emotional ambushes and dealing with her best friend Savvy's brutal unsolved murder. Her entire analytical focus strictly consumed by monitoring sudden threat vectors from a ruthless internet lynch mob, parsing complex behavioral shifts from her host family, and shielding her vulnerable personal sanity node from being entirely wiped out by a ruthless elite cleanup offensive. The spark ignites when an unexpected high-frequency structural anomaly breaches her active scanning perimeter. An elite, hyper-popular investigative podcaster named Ben Owens sets up his high-fidelity recording rig directly inside her hometown coordinates, transforming the cold case into a high-level calculated malice. As the hostile media execution phases enter an increasingly lethal terminal tier across her daily timeline, alternating podcast interview scripts and raw first-person psychological logs parallel each other. The official diagnostic metrics of the global tracking centers flash white-hot when her unauthorized internal investigative maneuvers and raw defensive output reveal that the night of the murder holds a completely different data alignment. The standard boundaries of routine criminal profiling and peaceful civilian compliance protocols crumble, and our central protagonists run completely out of standard diplomatic escape vectors. They are thrust directly into an active invisible war across the town, where deceptive childhood friends masking their true tracking coordinates, a volatile ex-husband faction, and a calculation-heavy psychological shadow network launch aggressive countermeasures to permanently suppress her survival data stream. The tactical parameters instantly explode as their historical and survival warfare turns completely active, transforming the isolated broadcasting studios, dark club countries, and private fortified residential rooms into a volatile psychological pressure cooker and a physical battle zone.
our protective, hyper-vigilant heroine is forced to deploy her massive intuitive tradecraft, elite behavioral mapping skills, and raw, snarky stamina to preserve her focus before her adversary's relentless, calculation-heavy proximity containment phase permanently deletes her boundaries. The threat vector remains purposeful and resolute, determined to deploy deep digital exposure loops, continuous localized surveillance, and persistent psychological dominance to break her defense, only to realize her hardened survival protocols and shifting counter-narratives match their raw tactical speed step for step. Every midnight archival excavation of past audio tapes, every silent choice to stand off against an encroaching adversary behind standard conversational barriers, and every intense moment of channeling raw, unyielding survival mechanics chips away at her reliance on original peaceful rules. What follows is an exceptional, high-stakes war of perspective, tactical position, and raw human grit. We watch the small-town elite's deceptive perimeters completely unwrapped as Amy Tintera reveals that the true victory requires more than just surviving an initial town exile or managing a difficult audio interview. It demands an absolute, uncompromising defense of individual dignity, personal truth, and systemic survival against a cold, calculating machine of domestic manipulation and psychopathic supremacy. While our central characters smooth over each other's psychological and defensive blind spots with devastating analytical force, creating a fiercely protective, absolute web of dark possessive loyalty around their shared perimeter, a brutal series of close-quarters tactical confrontations and high-stakes evidentiary breakthroughs shifts the clock into its terminal phase, proving that historical emotional hazards have tracked them to their final outpost. To survive the impending locked grid trap and permanently secure her sanctuary, our resilient heroine must unleash an absolute, unyielding defense of her final boundary lines. It is a psychological thriller, media suspense noir, amnesia mystery, and high-velocity contemporary puzzle masterpiece that treats deep relational logistics and intense structural friction with elite precision. The tension here burns with a sharp, calculation-heavy intensity. We are talking about that high-frequency, one-aired podcast episode triggers a fatal backwoods showdown energy, where a sudden pause during an active franchise tactical briefing, an unexpected shift in an adversary's protective physical posture during a high-stakes standoff confrontation, or a heavy, possessive realization that an elite intelligence operative has completely mapped your personal coordinates carries massive structural weight. Tintera writes with an exceptionally fresh, vivid, and beautifully blunt voice, perfectly capturing the heavy, oppressive atmosphere of a private executive vault before a major corporate takeover, and the distinct, subtle scent of polished mahogany, dry Texas dust, expensive audio electronics, stale beer, dynamic adrenaline, spilled copper, and pure, unadulterated suspense. What truly elevates this contemporary standalone marvel into elite territory is the author's unmatched ability to balance complex, high-stakes relationship dynamics and genuine protective power tradecraft alongside of breathtaking narrative pace and deep emotional hooks. Our protagonists don't rely on unbelievable, superficial Hollywood superhero action tropes. Their immense situational intelligence, strategic patience, and profound survival instincts match the complexity of the chaotic modern corporate and high society underworld they dominate step for step, making their choices to risk everything feel profoundly authentic and deeply gripping. The pacing moves with calculated momentum, tracking intense conversational standoffs and breathtaking tactical breakthroughs before ratcheting up to an absolute, jaw-dropping conclusion that delivers total, hard-earned advancement to their horizon. Listen for the Lie is the definitive pro-level upgrade your high-stakes contemporary thriller and intense asset suspense library demands right now. It is elegant, immensely fast-paced, and utterly unputtable. It proves that when your entire sanctuary is targeted by a cold, calculating institutional monster, the most revolutionary play you can execute is to lock your perimeters, trust your elite survival training, and fight like hell alongside your network to rewrite the data. So secure your personal reading sanctuary, review your emotional defensive perimeters, open your Kindle, and prepare to track the fleet.